Bet horse racing on DRF Bets. We'll match your first deposit of $200. Get free expert picks and past performances, plus weekly cash back. All from Daily Racing Form, the most trusted name in horse racing.
Hi everyone, David Aragona and Craig Milkowski here taking a look at the feature race at Gulfstream Park on Saturday. It is the Grade 3 Gulfstream Park Turf Sprint going the 5 furlong distance over the turf course at Gulfstream Park. A field of 10 signed on for this one, Craig, and it's a pretty competitive affair. Let's throw up the field for this race, and you'll see the 2-1 morning line favorite is the number 3 Belgrano, who is coming off a stakes victory last time, but there are a lot of horses with back class that you can make a case for in this race.
Totally agree with that. This is one of those 5 furlong turf sprints for older horses that just seems like you could go in a lot of different directions in here. Belgrano certainly has a good record, comes off a good win, but so does some others in here. And I just think there's many ways to go. Not sure I went 2-1 on Belgrano, but we'll get into that more as we move forward.
Let's move right into the Timeform US pace projector, because I think the early furlongs of this race are going to be pretty important regarding the outcome. And Craig, I know it's not easy to trigger that fast pace flag in a 5 furlong turf sprint. The threshold is pretty high, but I'm not surprised to see it showing up because there is a lot of speed in this race.
There is, and you can see it just when we go through some of these PPs. You're going to see horses that are shown back in 3rd, 4th, 5th that have a lot of ones in the first call of their PP. So there is a ton of speed, but as we all know, everyone can't make the lead. If somebody's going to have to pull back and tuck over, and I do think it's going to be interesting. It could get pretty hot, though. It just depends how the jockeys decide and how aggressive they are.
And you will notice that warning line favorite, the number 3 Belgrano, is shown all the way back in last place of the 10 runners. And he is probably the best closer in the field, but it's pretty tough to go from last to first in one of these Gulfstream Park turf sprints. Before we go to the main contenders, let's take a look at the Timeform US Finish Projector, one of the new features in Timeform US that you can access in your DRF mobile PPs by toggling over to the Finish Projector from the Pace Projector. And Craig, this is like a visual representation of the Timeform US Power Picks that you might be familiar with from the classic version of Timeform US. And it has those 2 runners that are the favorites on top, the number 4 Karataro edging out the number 3 Belgrano. They're both coming out of the same race, the Janus, which achieved a pretty high speed figure.
Yeah, the Finish Projector is basically using the speed figures to try to project who's going to win the race, similar to our former Power Picks. And to me, it's not a surprise that the 3 horses we show are the 3 old veterans, a couple 9-year-olds and a 7-year-olds, because they've all run fast races. Just depends, some more recently than others.
Well, let's begin our replays with those 2 horses listed in first and second on the Finish Projector, and we'll look at them competing last time in the Janus Stakes. That is Belgrano in the white blinkers, in the blue silks down on the rail, that's Karataro, and also notice in the red silks towards the back, that's Classic State of Mind. We'll talk about him in just a little bit, but the 2 horses that we're going to focus on here coming to the wire, Craig, Belgrano making that patented late run to get up at the finish line. Karataro was just never quite able to get to the front in this race, and that's going to hinder him, but we'll take a look at Belgrano's PPs, and he earned that 119 last time. A repeat of a number like that is going to make him pretty tough against this field. Once again, he's going to get some pace to close into like he did last time. You see those Timeform US pace figures up to 154 for the first quarter. We could see something similar in this race, but he's going to have to work on a trip from off the pace.
That 119, I believe, is a career best when I scrolled through his PPs, which you don't often see from a 9-year-old gelding. And I guess you have to ask yourself, do you think he can repeat it? It's one thing to repeat a figure when you're an improving lightly raced horse. I tend to take the side that it was more of the circumstances where he got an absolutely perfect trip. The pace was just... it was insane, a 154 that early in the race, going 5 furlongs. To get that kind of fraction, you are really motoring on the front end. Just think things set up perfectly. I do expect them to run well, but he's going to face a little more traffic than he did last time as well. I think he might get shuffled a little further back. So I don't want to say he can't win this race, but he wouldn't be one that I want to bet on.
Yeah, he's an easy horse to root for as a 9-year-old. He's for a long time been the beloved stable star for Frank Russo, the trader who runs a pretty small operation, but he really is going to need the trip to work out to win 2 races in a row at this level. And the horse that was also in that Janus last time, the number 4, Karatari, we'll take a look at his past performances. Craig, on his best day, he probably is the fastest runner in this field, but he's now 7 years old. I think there's a question of whether he still possesses that same early speed and pop out of the starting gate that he once did. And he's the kind of horse that if he doesn't make the lead, things can get a little bit dicey for him.
Yeah, that is a concern. I do think his last race was an excuse for him where he wasn't able to make the lead. It's not like it was a slow race with a weak pace figure. We can see the race pace figure was a 154 there. So I do think he still does have pretty good early speed. And I'm going to give him somewhat of an excuse in this one. His speed figure was still a 115. He was only beaten a couple lengths. So I'm taking a little more positive view of him than thinking he's so much in decline.
Yeah, around the 3-1 morning line, he's a horse that I would be against. It's an interesting rider switch to Joao Rosario, who can work some magic in turf sprints and get horses to win from off the pace that you wouldn't have thought capable of that. But Karatari, just based on his resume, is a horse that really does need the lead, and I'm not sure I can see him getting it in here. One more horse that I want to talk about from that Janus Stakes is the number 10 Classic State of Mind. And Craig, he finished far back. We only just briefly saw him in that replay. He, though, had his head turned at the start and completely missed the break. So that's why he was so far back in the early stages. And he looks light on the speed figures compared to the 2 that we just talked about. But keep in mind, his prior successful turf sprints came in the first half of his 3-year-old season last year. And with natural improvement from a 3-year-old to a 4-year-old year with a clean break, this is a horse that might be better than he looks on paper.
I think you make a good point there. And, it's an angle that I like. We can see he ran a 105 speed figure last time, which almost matched his career best of 106 run back in May over this Gulfstream Park Oval. So he's certainly improved, I think, on that effort. My one concern with him is the outside post and the fact that his best races have come on the front end. He's going to have to outrun some pretty quick horses to get a good position going into the turn. But he's 20-1 on the morning line, so I can't blame anyone for wanting to take a swing that he's going to be able to get up on or near that lead and be dangerous in the lane.
Yes, he does have his work cut out for him, but I will say that poor break last time seems very fluky. If you watch his prior races, he is typically very fast out of the starting gate, and he'll have to be from this outside post position. Let's move on to another horse that has had plenty of success at Gulfstream Park, and that is the number 5, Yes, I Am Free. We'll take a look at the replay of his last race when he narrowly won an optional claiming race, and just appreciate this replay because you're rarely going to see blanket finishes like this where there are about 6 horses that hit the wire at the same time. It was a really exciting race to go back and watch, and this guy, Craig, he just has a nose for the wire. 10 wins in 24 starts with only 4 second and third place finishes in total.
Right, and he's 7 for 14 at 5 furlongs on the turf at Gulfstream, so he doesn't mind Gulfstream. That is something I forgot to mention with Karatari. He's also 4 for 6 at Gulfstream going the 5 furlongs. But back to Yes, I Am Free. He does certainly seem to have a knack for finding the wire. He won this race last year. I just don't think this field was quite as the field last year was quite as tough as this one. He might have had a little easier trip. I think he's a contender. I just worry that he's not going to be able to get up to the front end like he did in his better races. It's not like he has to have the lead. We've seen him rate in second and run some pretty good ones before, but I just think this is a tougher group and don't really favor him in here.
Yeah, he's a horse that I've underestimated in the past. I didn't like him when he won at 8-1 last year. He was underestimated by the public when he was also 8-1 coming off the layoff last time. He's a horse that just doesn't take a lot of money for some lower profile connections, but seems to always run his race at Gulfstream Park. So I don't want to take him lightly in this spot. Let's move on to another horse that's drawn down towards the inside. That's the number 2 County Final. We'll take a look at his past performances, and he'll be switching back to the turf after a couple of races on the dirt. And that's kind of been the story of his career, Craig. He's sort of a dual surface horse that has run well on both surfaces. His turf speed figures are a little bit low compared to some others in here, but he is second off the claim for trainer Safi Joseph.
He is second off the claim, and you wonder why he took him. He put him right in that grade 3 Mr. Prospector, and he just ran okay. You see, he was beaten 9 lengths, but he essentially ran the same speed figure. I find it interesting. Safi Joseph moves him right back to the turf, where he's had some success. What I find interesting mostly about this horse is we talked about that it could set up for a closer, and that Belgrano is probably the best closer. I don't think it's really easy to identify who any of the other closers might be. If there's going to be one, I would say County Final could be that guy.
Yeah, just given the projected race flow here, I think he's going to have to come from off the pace here. And it's something that he has done with a little bit of success in the past, though not that often. So we'll see what we get from him switching back to the turf course. The horse drawn to his inside is the number 1 Rock Crest. He is a Canadian shipper, having done most of his prior racing at Woodbine. And Craig, this is just another horse that's probably going to be forcing that early pace because he has a lot of speed. And you have to imagine these connections are going to be looking to blast off from the inside post position.
I think he's finds himself in a tough spot here. He is fast. It's really the only way he's going to win the race is to get up to the front, make the lead, and just be able to hang on to the wire. But for me, from the inside draw, it just seems like he's going to get a ton of pressure from some others. I think there's some others who are just as quick, if not faster. So he's not for me, but hopefully he's ridden aggressively because that would give him his only real chance.
Yet another horse who's going to want to be forwardly placed is the number 7, Full Disclosure. We'll take a look at his last race, going this distance at Gulfstream against an allowance field, and that is him 2 wide off the far turn. He's going to gut out this victory to win by 3/4 of a length. This is just a significant step up in class, Craig, but he did win this his only prior turf start.
I like that you use the term gut out there because I think it's kind of important at Gulfstream. It just shows that even when these front runners are challenged and they have to go quick, it's not always easy to run them down over this course. So he's a danger as well. I like him a little more than I do Rockcrest, who's drawn inside, because at least he could maybe sit outside, get a little position, not get caught inside other horses while dueling. So he's another with speed who could be dangerous.
And then, Craig, will wrap up with one of the big question marks in this race, and that is the number 9, the Critical Way. At different points throughout his career, he probably would have been the favorite in this race, but it's been a while since we've seen one of his best efforts. He's coming off a layoff. It seems like he was tailing off when we last saw him in the summer at Saratoga, so it's just hard to know what we're going to get from him off this break.
It is. His last 2 running lines particularly, and maybe even 3 when he got beaten pretty easy by Belgrano at only 2-1 that day. He was running okay speed figures, but ever since that loss, he just seemed to tail off. We haven't seen him since September. I'm not writing him off yet as a good turf sprinter, but I don't think coming off a layoff for a 9-year-old this long is really the spot I'm looking for. I mean, he did something similar last year. You can see it in the race 4 starts back, but it gets tougher and tougher as these horses get older to have them sharp.
Yeah, even at his best, he wasn't always quick enough to make the front end, and he's the kind of horse that I worry could get shuffled out if he doesn't break quickly coming back off the layoff. Well, let's move on to our top picks for this race, and I'm not surprised to see us have a smattering of different numbers up here, Craig, because it's that kind of race. It's fairly wide open. You're going to go with that surface switcher, County Final, who's getting back onto the turf.
Yeah, I respect Safi Joseph, particularly at Gulfstream Park, where he does very well. Second off the claim with this horse, another stat that he does well with. He's also good first off the turf, or first off the claim. But that was a much deeper spot than this one, I think, even though they're both grade 3. Sibelius was a really strong-looking horse that day. So I'm taking a shot that he'll get a good inside trip, a closing trip, and be able to find some room. And nothing against Belgrano. I think he'll run fine. I just think maybe County Final will get the jump, and he's going to be probably 3 or 4 times the price.
Yeah, he figures to be a decent price in this race, and we both have Belgrano in there. I think we both respect his chances, just didn't want to take him as the favorite after he won it 10-1 last time. I respect the number 5. Yes, I am Free, who I've underestimated in the past. He's just the kind of horse that I want to have in the mix going this distance at Gulfstream Park, but I'm going to take a flyer for my top pick with the number 10, Classic State of Mind. We talked about him a little bit, how he was compromised last time, and I just think he's a horse that has some upside second off the layoff and feels like one that could just get totally lost in the wagering and be right up there near that 20-1 morning line. So going for a big price with Classic State of Mind. Craig also going for a price with the number 2 County Final in the Gulfstream Park Turf Sprint on Saturday at Gulfstream Park. Good luck if you're playing the races this weekend.